Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Crombie Radio Hour on Saga 960. I have an incredibly compelling and a little bit bothersome story to share with you tonight. Ewan Whyte is going to be joining us. He's going to be telling us about a story about assault at a school in Brockville and a legal case, a court case about it in a trial, about his own personal experiences and a connection to a cult. Ewan Whyte is a writer and a translator. He has written for the Globe and Mail and the Literary Review of Canada. He is author of Desire Lines, essays on art, poetry, and culture, Shifting Paradigms, essays on art and culture, Entrainment, a book of poetry and a translation of the rude ancient Roman poet Catullus. But his future essay is what we're going to be talking about, The Cult That Raised Me, on the U.S.-based Community of Jesus. Grenville Christian College Cult was a finalist for the National Magazine Award. Ewan Whyte, welcome to the show, sir.
Thank you very much for having me.
It's not a pleasure because this is such a horrific story, but it actually is interesting, and I really appreciate you joining us. I read the article in the Globe and Mail about former students of Grenville Christian College that have finally found closure. I understand you were a student at this college in Brockville.
Yes, when I wrote that piece, it was about the students finding some level of closure from going to this cult-controlled boarding school that was abusing students and had so many sort of prominent people mostly
associated with it.
Sorry?
Associated with the school.
Associated with the school in sort of in enabling type positions, like successive lieutenant governors of Ontario. Hal Jackman gave a commencement speech. I know, and some of these people would have been unwitting, but there were other people that should have seen the alarm. But
and let me, if I could, read from your article about what some of the alarm should have been about. You said that many of the children claimed varying levels of shocking maltreatment at the hands of the school administration and staff, including severe corporal punishment, constant verbal and emotional abuse, sexual harassment and sexual abuse, yelling, scapegoating, shunning, sleep deprivation, forced manual labor, and isolation. Seriously? That's what people experienced in a school in the last couple of years in Ontario?
Well, this is the period from 1973 to 1997, in which there was the class action included. A lot of students will say that abuses continued after that. A number of students talk about an OPP officer who was volunteering with the track team at the school, and surely must have known. But the OPP, according to so many students, would bring runaway students back to the school, in which I believe at age 16 you are able to leave. But they would bring the students back anyway, where they usually be beaten.
You yourself personally said that you were assaulted, isolated, thrown down a flight of stairs, repeatedly kicked, deprived of food and sleep, locked in a walk-in freezer, forced to sleep in soiled bedding for a week, sexually harassed, and that you witnessed sexual assault on children?
Yes.
And that when you complained about it to adults, you were beaten by a 2x4?
Yeah. Yeah.
Ewan, I'm sorry, I can't believe this is happening in a school in Ontario within the last 50 years. This is shocking.
Yeah, they got their ideas, and all of the leaders at the school became members of the American cult, the Community of Jesus, in Orleans, Massachusetts, Cape Cod.
And your parents were members of this cult, I understand.
Yes, yes, and they had they were a pretty extreme group, even for the evangelical Christians. I think most evangelical Christians would be outraged at them even calling themselves Christian.
I'm outraged that they would call themselves Christian, and that this school would be called a Christian school.
Yeah, I think when you look at the sayings of Jesus and you look at normal mainline denominations, these people don't qualify as Christian. It clearly is a cult with a long history going back to Germany, and a German sect, arguably a cult, and their brainwashing techniques, which the Americans, visited
Imported.
Darmstadt, yeah,
And
imported them
and
in.
in November, from what I understand, the Superior Court of Justice of Ontario ordered damages of $10.9 million. Is that correct?
Yes, yes.
To 1,350 students that would share the damages.
Yes, I think it's 1,359, but so roughly that. Yeah, roughly that.
How did this continue for so long?
I think in order for something like this to continue, they copied the model of the Community of Jesus, where a lot of the staff were Americans, to start with. They came over, and then a lot of them became Canadian citizens, actually. But they copied the Community of Jesus model, which gets sidle up to power. And when you get to be, well, we all know when you get to be friends with power, you get to be able to do what you like. It's like the funny lines of Juvenal, like, and who shall guard the guardians themselves? And of course, the answer is nobody. The police, there are two OPP connections, and they haven't been addressed. This, in a normal country, you'd have an independent body looking at this. Like if this were the UK, an independent body would actually look at it. But the Canadian system, I mean, it's like they're all friends. Like the OPP that clearly knew
Something was going on.
about abuses. There's no way they could not have known. And when they interviewed me in 2000, I think it was 7 or 8, like they clearly were on the side of the school, and they used cult language of the school. A lot of former students say, wow, they're on the side of the school. There was also
Let me read this final paragraph that you wrote. Despite the trial and hours of testimony from former students and staff, many enablers I have confronted have either been dismissive, in complete denial, or have refused to acknowledge anything happened at Grenville. I believe the highly addictive nature of the light sessions has convinced many people that they had participated in something truly spiritual. You got to explain to me, maybe we'll take a break and you can explain to me what these light sessions are that can convince people that they were spiritual. But how can anyone condone any of these abuses that you mentioned and that obviously the court found actually happened?
well,
Been in a light session or not? How can people condone that?
Yeah, I mean, what is it? Is it Pascal? Whatever, the men in trying to be angels have transformed themselves into beasts. And I think this is the incredible aspect of religious, would you call it, approach it, piety, or whatever you want to call it. The danger of that whole religious endeavor is that, when people pretend to or think they interpret the word of God, so often they end up, playing God themselves. And this is clearly a case of that, in my opinion, that you have so many accounts of people at the Community of Jesus saying that they felt that the leaders spoke from the mouth of God itself. They had a special, path of communication with God. And how did they get this? Well, I'll talk about the light sessions after and how they're such an effective form of mind control.
Were you subjected to light sessions?
Oh, constantly.
Were
Yeah.
your parents?
Oh, yes. Yeah.
Are you still in communication with your parents?
Well, they've gone interstellar. My mother was a very damaged person, and she had a lot of shortcomings.
What
she
took
was
them into the cult?
well. I mean, she was raped as a young girl, and so she had this sort of salvation type of thing, and she was the typical type of person that could be I think, fairly easily controlled. I mean, she was educated. Now, the other fascinating thing about this cult is in the humanities or like the arts, which they claim to be into. They're very, very weak. When you talk to them, you realize these are not people who you could address seriously in cultural terms. But they're people, who are mind bruised. A lot of people came from back sort of backgrounds that left them vulnerable to joining a cult, and they present themselves as these great
The
achievers.
people
But
in
when
the
you talk,
cult were, but then you described the people that came to this school as people that were from the elite. How did these people end up being part of
well,
a cult? And
Tommy, for example, Tommy Hunter's son was treated with kid gloves. The Tommy Hunter show guy. He was treated very well. Usually, the elites were treated extremely well, and it was a hands-off thing. But the school was used as kind of like a mining ground to get people to go and join the Community of Jesus cult proper in Cape Cod. So many former students moved to the C of J, Community of Jesus, and became members. So, and then usually they would work for free if they became like a brother, like a faux monk or a sister. And so their life would be spent, they take a vow of chastity and poverty, and they'd work for free. I mean, one guy, it was heartbreaking to see him. Uh, you know, he was a very messed up sort of guy. He ended up, I ended up talking with him. It was very sad. And then he's stationed in their outpost in their sort of holiday mansion in Italy. And it's sad to see these people.
it's far worse than sad. It's terrifying and disgusting, frankly, that this would happen, and astonishing that it would happen in a school in Ontario. We've got to take a break for some messages, and we're going to come back in just a few minutes with Ewan and talk a little bit more about the background for this. We've talked about the trial. We might come back to the trial in a bit, but I want to understand the background of this community of Jesus. I want to talk about these light sessions and what they were. I want to talk about how people can get into a cult and why they're so vulnerable that they can be subsumed by a cult. Stay with us, everyone. Back in 2 minutes. Welcome back, everyone, to the Brian Crombie Radio Hour on Saga 960. Having a chat today with Ewan Whyte, who has written a really scary, compelling article in the Globe and Mail recently, and he's written as well in some other publications about the Grenville Christian College that had a trial that the Superior Court of Justice in Ontario found them guilty and awarded damages of over $10 million to over 1,600 former students. I had not heard this story before, and I don't think it got much press, but a 16-year class action lawsuit against
students. I'm sorry to interrupt. 1,350 students, just in case. Thank you.
16-year class action lawsuit against the Grenville Christian College that came to a close. And Ewan was a student there for a couple of years, and was I guess indoctrinated in and brought up in this cult because his parents were in the cult. And he's now writing about it. Ewan, can we take a step back? One of the things that you talked about was these light sessions, and that people found these light sessions were somehow religious or divine or something, and that they actually believed in them. And you've described them as something that was terrifying and very effective in getting people to believe in the cult. So tell me about what these are, where they came from, and how they were used on you.
So light sessions originally came from a German sect called the Evangelical Sisterhood of Mary in Darmstadt, Germany. And the leaders of the Community of Jesus cult, before they started their cult, they went to Darmstadt, visited this monastic community, which didn't, like the Community of Jesus, had no oversight. The leaders could just do whatever they wanted. And so that's classically what we would call, typically what we would call a cult. And so the way they controlled people, the Lichtgemeinschaften, as the Germans call them, the communities of light. It's a passage. I think it's in John. It's about living in the light and pointing out each other's sins. But they took it to this extreme level. And in Germany, it was more regulated. Germans can make a German joke there, but the Americans decided to be very savage about the light sessions, and they would have a light session anytime, and it could happen to you at any moment. Now, what a light session is from a child's perspective, my child's perspective, like starting at age 8, suddenly there's these adults around. One of them feels this intuition in the spirit of God somehow that you have a bad attitude. And so they'll sort of wolf pack you while threatening you with violence. And you have to put on this song and dance and confess your sin sort of openly, Catholic style, sort of confession, but publicly. And the adults are sort of playing the roles of the priestly roles of offering this alleged forgiveness. But you'd be interrogated severely, always a threat of
What do you
violence.
mean? What do you mean wolf pack session interrogation? So you're what, in a circle with adults or fellow students or what?
With adults, yes.
And they're
Yeah.
criticizing.
And they're criticizing you, but in the most hurtful way you can imagine. Like, just it's like they were, because of so many light sessions, they become quite refined in a way to hurt you quite significantly. Whereas a normal person on the street wouldn't be able to do that. But if you've been doing light sessions for many years, the ability to sense where someone's vulnerable and really hurt them is quite refined. But see, so the light session sort of has a pattern to it. It starts out with severe interrogation, children always threats of violence, and they question your sense of reality. For example, when I was a child, I could watch a cat. I watched a cat run across the road, and they said, no, the cat didn't run across the road, and they had me convinced that a cat didn't run across the road. And it's very, very convincing. So by attacking somebody and the sustained attack over a period of time, um, and then at the end of it, they say, no one else loves you like you're loved. At people who are members of the cult, the Community of Jesus, Grenville cult. No one loves you like us. We love you more than anyone else. If you go out in the world, you'd be on the street, or you'd be, an alcoholic or a prostitute, and this kind of thing. And it's a kind of love bombing. And now you can sustain maybe 20 of these without losing your sense of self. I'm kind of comically overstating. But once you get so much of this over time, you can be convinced to believe almost anything. But at the end of a light session with the love bombing, because it's so awful, it's like the brain releases a kind of endorphins or whatever it would be. And you feel like, often people feel like it's a religious experience at the end, like somehow they're closer to God for it. And these things, you got to remember, these things are extremely refined. They get it from the Germans, who really refine this. Then it goes to the Americans. And then Charles Farnsworth unleashes it on these students at Grenville Christian College, unwitting students. And of course, the damage is going to be quite significant. And everything was really to his whim, if he decided he liked somebody or didn't like somebody. And, the CBC Fifth Estate ran two 1-hour programs about him sexually assaulting students, also in CTV, and he was, raping students as well. Two students who were raped were in the programs. I mean, he was a very, very evil man.
So
And
this was who? This was the principal or the leader?
headmaster of Grenville Christian College,
And he was
was
the son
raping
of
students.
he was the son of someone else associated with the cult?
Well, his son was also raping students. Yeah, his son Robert Farnsworth was also raping students. So you not only had to worry about these light sessions from my perspective, and I had the misfortune of being deemed a staff student, which meant you were treated much worse. You're kind of like an unhuman in Orwellian terms, really. Like But you have to worry about people going after you, like, being grabbed in the shower is what happened to me. It's like this type of thing, you lose your sense of self. And that's why the suicide rate of former students is astronomically high. And, even one of the valedictorians killed himself as well. But, then you end up with people like, someone like a Dan Gillis, I guess calls himself Stu Gillis, but, and you look up, he was found guilty of sexual assault of a woman and and actually, I think assault as well. Some CBC articles on it. And this is a former Grenville prefect. So they would teach students to behave in horrific ways as well. There's a long list of Grenville people who've gone on to be very beastly to others when they get out. There's another one, I think, of this guy, and he had assault with a deadly weapon convictions. I mean, it's just they teach people to be they would teach people to be very to be in touch with the worst parts of themselves. And often
how does that have anything to do with Christianity? Like, I can sort of maybe understand a little bit about the criticism or the assistance coaching, and then the confession that you describe. Not obviously the extreme of the whole light session, but the idea of people giving you some advice. But assault, whether physical, verbal, or sexual, how does that have anything to do with the Bible, Christianity, or religion?
I think with the light sessions, it distorts your reasoning. It distorts people's reasoning, and it distorts because there's the sense that this somehow is a religious experience, and
that gives you the right to rape someone.
Oh, well, from their perspective, it certainly appears that way. Yeah, I mean, the whole religious experience thing is a very dangerous thing. Yes, it can produce remarkable things like, Teilhard de Chardin and the prayers of Teilhard de Chardin, these Saint Kindness stories and stuff, but it also produces, the right and wrong. We've got a dualistic situation. It's one side of the seesaw, you're going to have the other. And that's a problem with these groups when they don't have oversight, because there's no bishop looking over them. Well, I mean, the Anglican Church deliberately looking the other way. And Gordon Mintz is the last headmaster of Grenville. He worked as a padre in the Canadian military, but he was a senior padre and an Anglican, like not only an Anglican priest, but a canon. And he's associated with, I think it's All Saints Church in Collingwood today. I mean, and this is a guy that took vows of obedience to the community of Jesus, and this, vows for life, and he's somehow allowed to be an Anglican priest. And the Anglicans clearly would have known, but they managed to got themselves off the, out of the suit, saying they didn't have official authority. And but yet the church flew the Anglican flag. And clearly there's powerful people in the Anglican hierarchy that deliberately have been ignoring this. For example, there was a CBC Fifth Estate exposed a letter that was sent about one of the rapes by Headmaster Charles Farnsworth against a staff student, a girl. I mean, there were others, but the Anglican Church chose to ignore it. They just let it. They let it. I think the excuse was. Go ahead.
No, please. The excuse was.
I think the excuse was that they claimed that the staff might not have believed it, and then the other secondary excuse was they didn't name the student in the letter. But the letter was. I mean, this is. Or whatever it was, like I think it was 2001 or so, and that they managed to get themselves off, and yet this guy who clearly was partied to abuses. He was a teacher many years when Charles Farnsworth was a headmaster. And then he gets promoted, and he's actually still an active member of the Anglican Church of Canada. So when you like these power people, this buddy system, it's hard to go against them. And they would be careful in who they would pick on. They wouldn't pick on anyone who had the teeth to hit back. Well, now, now they're being hit back. I mean, we'll see. It's a little bit late, but the American branch of the cult is still going, and it'd be nice to do something for the children.
Is the school still operational?
Schools closed in Canada, but the American cult is still active.
And the individuals, the school was sued for this over $10 million. But what about the former headmasters? Were they sued directly, personally?
I think their estates were included in the suit. I'm not certain of the final outcome of what happened with the estates.
And there's been no criminal finding.
Well, there was a criminal trial. This is a fascinating one. This involves the police again. So there was a trial against Robert Farnsworth for, I guess they called it sexual assault or indecent, one of the indecent charges, sexually related. And he was found not guilty, although apparently the judge said, "I believe you," to the victim. And he was Robert Farnsworth was a member of staff, of course, at that time. But the two people that the Crown called were both cult members. They could have chosen another former second in charge at the school who was no longer a cult member, but the Crown deliberately, well, in my opinion, deliberately did not call her. So
what a horrific...
Are they going to lie? Are they going to lie in the stand? Well, of course they're going to lie in the stand. Of course they're going to lie.
What a horrific story.
And there's, I mean, I think the fact that guy got off, it's shocking. It's shocking, but it shows the lack of will of anyone in the area to go after what's the remnants of the school. And I think that trial was 2016.
Well, and we've heard lots of stories about residential schools and about some Catholic priests and others that did completely inappropriate things. I'm surprised I guess you're saying that there were a couple of CBC programs and the articles that you have written, but it certainly hasn't got the kind of attention that it deserves. And I worry about this cult still existing in the United States, even if the school has been closed in Canada. We got to take a break for some messages, and we're going to come back in 2 minutes with Ewan Whyte and talk a little bit about this cult in the United States and how it got created and how his parents got involved and how he ended up being part of it. Stay with us, everyone. Back in 2 minutes. Welcome back, everyone, to the Brian Crombie Radio Hour on Saga 960. We're chatting today with Ewan Whyte. He's recently written a book called Shifting Paradigms, Essays on Art and Culture. But we're talking tonight about an article that he's written about an experience that he has had, an article that he's written about the Grenville Christian College and a legal suit by 1,600, and I think he said 95 students, maybe it was 99, I can't remember, that won over $10 million in a court case against the Grenville School because of a history of assault. Let me just read here again from your article. The children were claiming varying levels of shocking maltreatment at the hands of schools administration and staff, including severe corporal punishment, constant verbal and emotional abuse, sexual harassment and sexual abuse, yelling, scapegoating, shunning, sleep deprivation, forced manual labor, and isolation. And yourself, you said there that you were assaulted, isolated, thrown down a flight of stairs, repeatedly kicked, deprived of food and sleep, locked in walk-in freezers, forced to sleep in soiled bedding for a week, sexually harassed, and witnessed the sexual assault on children. And then when you complained about it to adult staff, you were beaten with a 2x4. I'm
that's
sickened by this.
That's the Community of Jesus style of Christianity at the time. You know, they're going to claim that they're softer. Um, you know, they're the same. They're the same as they were, you know,
You said that you were a
29.
forced child member of the Community of Jesus. Tell us, if you could, about the Community of Jesus.
So they were I guess I think they were incorporated in 1970, and they were one of the three original covenant communities in the U.S. in the
Charismatic.
charismatic, uh, and so they I think the other is the people of praise. I think that's 72, and the other is the word or the word of God. I think that's 67. Um, but these people were very extreme, and not so extreme that, you know, like Christians, normal Christians really wouldn't consider them to be Christian. You know, they may dress up as Christians. They have, you know, this choir, this Gloria Dei choir, um, and they go around and they try to promote themselves as being, you know, this Benedictine style arts community, and yet no one will affiliate with them. They're clearly a cult. I think one point Bishop Canon Rodman in Massachusetts said, you know, they're a classic cult. Um, they they um, they copied everything from this German sect, as we said before, the Evangelical Sisterhood of Mary, but then they just made it even more extreme. And it was you know, the kind of sexual perversion of the leaders who were, you know, like the people they associate with were very questionable people, like Charles Farnsworth. If he's your friend, you got to really wonder. He was the headmaster of Grenville. You got to really wonder what kind of person somebody is if this guy is they're close to him. And Kay and Judy always on holiday with Charles Farnsworth. They hid their, you know, they would preach all these terrible things about gays and lesbians, and yet they were in a secret lesbian affair, and and yet they would be horrible to anyone who would be gay or lesbian. It was,
So
and
this is the two founders, Kay Anderson and Judy Sorensen. You said were middle-aged housewives who started this cult. Um, have they been found guilty of sexual assault or assault, or have they never been charged?
well um well they're all over the trial, and they're named in the trial many times. They're, you know, they're all through the transcripts. But you know, the leader after them, uh, they also call themselves mothers. So self-styled mother Betty Pugsley, her husband was raping boys and raped a lot of boys. I have a long list, and the amounts of some of the boys who were paid off, and he was raping boys. And well,
This
how do
this
I
was
know this?
at the school.
At the Community of Jesus
Did
in Massachusetts. Well, how do
oh,
I
so
know this?
sorry, hold on, I apologize. So that this happened in the school in Brockville, but it also happened, you're saying, in Massachusetts?
Uh, well, yeah, there were, yes, it happened. I mean, uh, Richard Pugsley wasn't in, senior wasn't as far, well, he probably visited Grenville. Of course he must have. Of course he must have. But um, I know about his rapes at the Community of Jesus where I was a child, and I was in a choir, and I had to sort of hide from him because he's taking runs at all these boys,
Has
my
he
little
been
friends.
charged in Massachusetts?
No, he was never charged. He was never charged. They managed to pay. It appears they managed to pay everyone off, and yeah. But I have
Was
a.
was the Community of Jesus in Massachusetts a school or just a church or what?
It was a. It's like a compound, religious compound community.
So the people would
Uh,
live there full time,
yes,
and you did for a while,
yes. It was about 250 members or so back then.
like a commune.
Yeah, but they're pretty far right. I mean, they all have like, you know, like you know, like very short hair. I mean, they kind of, I mean, you can make a lot of jokes about it, but I mean, you see them coming and they look creepy because they all have the same, the men have the same short hair, the girl, they're dressed, conservative 1940s style. Like it's, I mean, you see them coming and there's something
Is the Community of
not of
Jesus
our
still
time.
operational in Massachusetts?
Oh, yes. Oh, yes.
Have there been
Yeah.
stories publicized about the assaults?
The publicized sexual assaults against them, no, they have not been publicized. No, no.
So it's only the one case here in Canada that's
Actually, that's not true. The CBC Fifth Estate exposed uh, two child rape cases that I didn't know about. Well, I know if I there was a lot of it, so I get it mixed up. Maybe I knew about this one and didn't know or whatever because I had to take the bus back, the minibus with one of the perpetrators when I was young. So, but I don't think I knew about these child rape and sexual assault cases. But the CBC Fifth Estate exposed that, and they took place in the compound in Massachusetts. Yes,
you and
but they
you were raised in this compound. Your parents were part of the cult. You attended the school in Brockville. How did you escape the cult? And how did you
yeah,
escape being sort of indoctrinated into the abuse practice, I guess?
yeah well yeah it was a difficult it's been a difficult life. Yeah, it's been a pretty difficult life. But yeah, no, I would, yeah, I'd have to spend every summer from what age 8 to 16. Also, I guess I was there at age 17. The and then I was there. I think I was there constantly. I think I was 9 and I was 11 when I left. But then, of course, back all the time, and then sometimes you come back in the winter. Um, they I think accidentally I did running, which is one of the things that apparently, if you read Bessel van der Kolk's The Body Keeps the Score, it's like the number one thing in terms of recovering from stress and high cortisol levels that you get from the stress. So I think maybe it was a bit of an accident. I sort of got through, and then choosing to write is rather a crazy prospect. I got another book coming out next year, but you know,
So
yeah, maybe.
when was it that you left the cult?
So I left 16, but I still would get calls, and I mean, had in, I did see them when I was age 17, and I would get calls from the cult leaders, even at Grenville, uh, about trying to get me to go back into the cult. Um, it really messes with your head. And I feel so badly for so many of these children that grow up with this, and then they try to come out into the normal world and try to integrate into society, and it makes it very hard because they're the relationships that they have are based on this cult style of relationships and telling on people and light sessioning, uh, which distorts someone's sense of reality, and it distorts their sense of self, and it makes it very, very difficult
Have you been
to.
able to form relationships?
Yeah, I mean, it was very difficult for a long time. I ended up in a period of homelessness, sleeping in parks. You know, I didn't have an infrastructure. Bessel van der Kolk talks about that. Those who have either a friend network, family network, um, they're going to do much better, or a community or a religion that you believe in that's not fanatical. Um, you're going to do much better. That's really the key element. I didn't have anything like that, so
So you,
I
you were homeless.
yeah, yeah, for a while. Yeah, unfortunately.
Do you
Yeah.
do you believe in religion today?
Well, I mean, you know what? What's the funny line in Apuleius? If donkeys had gods, they'd be in the shape of donkeys. Well, I guess I'm the only one who found that funny. But I think, I think humans make up religions. And I think when you look at Christianity, you look at the sayings of Jesus, it's really different from the doctrinal stuff that you get. I mean, the sayings of Jesus would really be, la René Girard, that French anthropologist, it really would be an anti-scapegoating um, approach to the world, really, an approach to kindness and relationship in human terms. Now, you don't get that in the structures of ecclesia, or, as you would have it, like in its various forms. So, no, I
Are
mean,
you
people can believe Santa if they want, or God, or they can believe in all these things. I mean, the God element is going to be abstract. If you're going to be, what's the lines in Glenn Gould? The tyranny of organized religion is that it claims God as its sole property, and I like that. But
are you in touch with people from the school or from the cult today?
yes, yes, yeah, we're trying to do something for the children that are in there. That would have meant a lot to me if someone had tried to help me and not just left me on my own. And I think as a proper atheist, sometimes it takes an atheist to try to do a Christian thing. So I'm going to try to do that.
Sometimes it takes an atheist to do a Christian thing. That's pretty profound and sad. We're going to take a break for some messages and come back in just 2 minutes with some concluding comments. Stay with us, everybody. Welcome back, everyone, to the Brian Crombie Radio Hour on Saga 960. It's been a really distressful discussion that I've had tonight. Distressful for me, talking about Grenville Christian College, University Preparatory School in Brockville, Ontario, that was sued by over 1,600 students, and they won over $10 million for what was found to be a history of shocking maltreatment at the hands of the school administration and staff, including severe corporal punishment, constant verbal and emotional abuse, sexual harassment, sexual abuse, yelling, scapegoating, shunning, sleep deprivation, forced manual labor, and isolation. We've talked about that. We've talked about Ewan Whyte's own personal experiences. We've talked about something called light sessions that sound just horrific. And obviously, sexual assault, physical assault, being beaten by a 2x4 with a 2x4 when Ewan tried to tell adult teachers about adult staff about what was going on. And the fact that while the school is closed down, the cult is still operational in the United States. You and I've spoken to a couple of other people from other cults or religions that some people call cults, and they've talked about the difficulty of getting out of the cult, particularly if that's the family they know and everything they've known since they've been a child. Given your experience and the fact that you didn't have that sort of support network and you still had the guts to go live on the street and get out of the cult, do you have any suggestions for people if they find themselves in this kind of horrific situation? What to do?
I think well, first of all, it's roughly 1,350 students. And sorry about that.
I did say
I
over 1,300, but okay.
well, I'm sorry. No, sorry. It's the legal element. Probably want to cut this part out. It's just the legal element. I just want to make sure everything is precise because, and that's it. It's just to protect you. That's all. So, like when you compare, say, the Nixium cult or some of these other cults, I think, what is that? Stephen Hassan, a US cult specialist, like they break down your sense of loyalties so you don't have it to family bonds. It's directly to the leaders of the cult, which is how this Grenville Community of Jesus cult was. And is, well, what's left of it still is. And I think when someone comes from that, it takes a while to be able to form proper relationships and like normal sort of bonds. But you can recover if someone comes from this environment. It is possible to recover. Bessel van der Kolk would recommend picking up running or any sort of repetitive cardiovascular activities, because it really does help. But I think somehow finding a network or a community would be really, really important for someone. I'm not sure it's possible to do it without that. But I mean, there may be some people who could. But we would recommend that type of thing.
There must have been a catalyst for you, even though you didn't have that support network, to finally leave, even though you ended up living on the street.
Yeah. I mean, it's a long story. I've got a memoir that's going to eventually come out on this and recovering from
we'll have to talk again when that comes out. I understand, have a poem that's relevant to this topic that you were going to read for me.
Yes, an atheist writing a poem on a Christian theme. Yes. So Saint Francis, as we all know, I don't know, the sort of everyone's favorite medieval saint, Saint Francis. So a note about Saint Francis, who, as the story goes, was a rich dandy who partied it up in his youth. He was later very friendly to the poor and gave away his possessions so liberally. His father disinherited him in the public square of Assisi. There he took off all his clothes, so he would possess absolutely nothing, was given a burlap bag to cover himself by a member of the clergy, and walked barefooted out of the town singing a French song. So I wrote a poem on St. Francis, although I'm an atheist, but I like the idea of a lot of the medieval saints. I like the idea of the following of, the good deeds or the sayings of the Jesus character. So, Fioretti of St. Francis, the Little Flowers of St. Francis. Returning home after an extravagant party, stopping for shelter in a half-fallen country chapel, looking out over the fields through the holes in the walls, he took off his rich clothes. For a week he spoke with Sister Moon and Brother Sun, hearing their songs in inflected light. After the last night, at the first moments of dawn, when the sun sends its sheets of fire over the living surface of the earth, he woke with joy and shuddered to the opening of the fields of flowers.
Thank you very much for joining us today and telling us a little bit about your story, about this legal fight, about this cult, about light sessions, about escaping a cult, and bringing to our awareness how horrific this school was and this cult is. Hopefully people will make changes. Thank you, Ewan.
Thank you very much for having me.
That's our show for tonight, everyone. I thank you for joining us. I thank Ewan for raising this difficult topic. I remind you, every Monday through Friday at 6 o'clock on 960 AM. You can stream me online at www.saga960am.ca. And all my podcasts and videos are available after the radio show airs on my website, briancrombie.com. Good night, everyone. I like Ewan's line about sometimes it's an atheist. It takes an atheist to do something Christian. I hope that's not always the case. Good night, everybody.